Hey everybody, I was going to do a long video today about Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and I am going to talk about him, but it turns out it's not the video I was going to make. I was planning to make one today that I've been meaning to make for quite a while about Pete Hegseth's connection to Doug Wilson and Doug Wilson's Christian nationalist church movement that's based out in Moscow, Idaho. You've probably heard me talk about that before. And it's a super important story, that the fact that Pete Hegseth is part of that movement. And it deserves, I think, a deeper dive than I can do today, because I got knocked off course a little bit today when Pete Hegseth went sort of full metal jacket on the press corps. And I think I need to talk about this. So I've realized the past few days that one of the most helpful lenses that I think we can use to understand Hegseth and really the whole Trump administration is William Shakespeare. Like every day, the second Trump term looks a little bit more to me like a Shakespearean tragedy. And if it ends that way, that doesn't bode well for anyone involved. It's not hard for me to imagine Trump himself ending up as sort of a King Lear figure, insane and raging at the elements, blow winds and crack your cheeks, which incidentally, for my money, is one of Shakespeare's funnier puns, but we'll have to save that for another time. I've been thinking, though, about the Shakespeare thing the past few days because I've been imagining the intrigue that must be happening behind the scenes at the White House. When you hire a bunch of radically unqualified, pretty trite people to head some of the most powerful agencies in the world, people who share two qualifications, basically, unchecked ambition and unquestioned loyalty to Trump. All I can say is someday when the full story is told of what's happening behind the scenes, like right now, I think it's going to be just some must-watch theater. And so I was trying to guess the other day which of Trump's nominees are going to be the first to be fired or forced to resign. And my money's on Tulsi Gabbard, but it's really impossible to tell right now because things just change in all the intrigue. And as I was thinking about it, I remembered reading Hamlet in high school. Mr. Dorn was one of my favorite teachers. I mean, he was a great teacher, and I'll never forget the day that we read the end of Hamlet. He had each of us read a certain character. And as each character died, he had the student who was reading that character come and lay on the floor in front of the class. So it was really quite the body count by the time it was over of the students laying on the floor. So I've been thinking about that, and I've been thinking about the Trump administration. And it helps me to understand what we're seeing play out before our eyes in Washington. I mean, Donald Trump comes from not the world of Shakespeare, but the world of reality television. And he loves to see people face off against each other and fight against each other for his affections. And once you understand that none of these people want to be figuratively laying on the floor at the end of the play, then it goes a long way toward explaining why Hegseth did what he did today. He came out to update reporters on the damage assessments from Trump's attacks on Iran, but throughout the meeting, he lambasted the press to their faces. And I'm going to play one short clip to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to play any more than that. But this is how he responded to Jennifer Griffin from Fox News when she asked what I think was a very reasonable question. In fact, it was the question at the top of my mind. So here it is.
Certainty that all the highly enriched uranium was inside the Fordo Mountain, or some of it, because there were satellite photos that showed more than a dozen trucks there 2 days in advance. Are you certain none of that highly enriched uranium was moved?
Of course, we're watching every single aspect, but Jennifer, you've been about the worst, the one who misrepresents the most intentionally. What the president says. I'm familiar.
Report about the ventilation shafts on Saturday night. And in fact, I was the first to describe the B-2 bombers, the refueling, the entire mission with great accuracy. So I take issue with that.
I appreciate you acknowledging that this was the first the most successful mission based on operational security that this department has done since you've been here, and I appreciate that. So we're looking at all aspects of intelligence and making sure we have a sense of what was.
So I watched that, and I watched the rest of his press conference, and I thought, what a what a punk. I mean, he's got total power over these people because he's the Secretary of Defense, and their jobs depend upon not responding to him in kind. He can afford to be unprofessional because he works for the president. I mean, let's let that sink in. I mean, I'm going to say it again. Pete Hegseth can afford to be abusive and unprofessional because he works for the president, Donald Trump. I mean, what does that say about where we are as a nation? I mean, he knows that the press can't respond in the same way. They just have to take it. And I thought, what kind of a man will verbally abuse an entire room full of people who have no right to defend themselves and not feel totally ashamed of himself? I guess Pete Hegseth. I guess it's somebody like him. But it makes total sense what he did when you realize that Hegseth has been on the hot seat for quite a while now. His job is in jeopardy. He's made some very public errors, and now he's got to earn his keep for Donald Trump so he doesn't become the first one laying on the floor, figuratively. So he came out and asserted his dominance in his way over the news media. But the entire time, he was playing to an audience of one. And I can't help but think, this didn't work, not long term. I've been open to hearing the Trump administration's explanations on the damage assessments from the attack on Iran. And I'm sure that it's not black and white. It's not success or failure, like an on-off switch. I mean, I'm sure it's a mixed bag because it always is. But Hegseth just poured fuel on the fire for people who think that he and Trump are lying. I mean, I listened to him rant at the media, and I thought, the lady doth protest too much, methinks. And it confirmed one thing for me. It's going to be decades before we really hear the actual truth about these attacks. So I'm sure that that's the effect that it had on a good chunk of the American people, too. But Pete Hegseth is fighting for his career right now. So he went out and danced for Donald Trump. And that might help him survive a while longer in Trump's orbit. But it showed us something important. In order to please Donald Trump, in order to remain as a sycophant in Trump's court, he had to behave in a way that Trump admires, but the rest of America finds pretty gross and off-putting. Trump can get away with acting that way, but Pete Hegseth just doesn't have it. Whatever it is, that thing that Trump has that causes people to give him a pass when he acts the way that Hegseth acted today. Pete loves putting himself out there as a masculine, manly man, warfighter, tough guy, bro. And he tried to mark his territory in the press room today and assert his dominance, the alpha dog. But instead, he sounded, I don't know, shrill, hysterical, over-emotional, catty, nagging, touchy, dramatic, bossy, moody, petty, clingy, melodramatic, generally like a high-maintenance emotional wreck. So if that's what he was going for, then mission accomplished. And I hope Pete enjoys his time in the court of the king, because once the curtain falls on this particular tragedy, I think he's going to be remembered as sort of a troubled and grasping person who was willing to attack whoever he needed to attack, if it meant that he could prance around on the stage and play the role of a substantial man, if only for a season. So thanks for listening.